I, 28F, have had a complicated relationship with my stepsister Laura, 32F, since we became family 18 years ago. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 8, and my dad married Laura's mom when I was 10. Laura was 14 at that time and made it clear from day one that she wasn't happy about having a new sister. Growing up, Laura always treated me like I was beneath her. When we were younger, she would exclude me from her activities, make fun of me in front of her friends, and sometimes even break my things and blame it on me. My dad never saw this side of her because she acted perfectly sweet whenever adults were around. He was so focused on making his new marriage work that he always took Laura's side in any conflict, probably to show his new wife that he cared about her daughter too. Laura's mom, my stepmom Susan, wasn't much help either. She would just tell us to work things out ourselves. I think she felt guilty about moving on after Laura's dad abandoned them, so she let Laura get away with everything. The dynamic was always the same. Laura would do something mean, I would complain, Dad would say I was being oversensitive, and Susan would stay quiet. Things got a bit better when Laura went to college because we didn't have to see each other much. She met Martin, 35M, in her senior year, and they got married right after graduation. Martin comes from a wealthy family and works as a sales executive at a big company. He always seemed nice enough but very disconnected from family stuff. Laura got a job as an HR manager at a tech company, and they had 2 kids, Jake, 6M, and Emma, 4F. I live alone in an apartment about 15 minutes away from them. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which means I work from home but have lots of client meetings and strict deadlines. The problem started about 8 months ago when Laura suddenly started asking me to watch her kids. At first, it wasn't too bad. She would call a few days in advance asking if I could watch them when both she and Martin had late meetings. I agreed because I genuinely love my niece and nephew. Jake is a smart kid who loves drawing with me, and Emma is the sweetest little girl who always gives me hugs. Plus, I figured helping out once or twice a month wasn't a big deal. But then Laura started taking advantage. The requests became more frequent, and the notice got shorter. She would call me an hour before dropping them off, sometimes not even calling, just showing up at my door. If I said I had work, she would say things like you work from home, you can be flexible, or it's just for a few hours. She never seemed to understand that working from home doesn't mean I'm available 24/7. 3 months ago, I had to cancel a video call with my biggest client because Laura dropped the kids off 10 minutes before the meeting. When I told her later that she can't do this, she just laughed and said, "Oh come on, you can always reschedule work stuff. We're family." The frequency kept increasing until it became 3 to 4 times a week. She would claim she had urgent meetings, but then I'd see her Instagram stories showing her at lunch with friends or getting spa treatments. When I confronted her about this, she got defensive and said she deserves me time and I should be grateful she trusts me with her kids. I tried talking to Martin about it, but he was useless. He just shrugged and said that's just how Laura is and you should be happy to spend time with your niece and nephew. He never offered to help with childcare himself or hire a babysitter, even though they could easily afford it. Dad was even worse. When I went to him for help, he gave me a lecture about how families should support each other. He said I was being selfish because I don't have kids, so I don't understand how hard it is to be a working mother. He completely ignored the fact that I was losing work and clients because of Laura's constant impositions. The final straw came last month. I had a huge presentation for a potential client that could have doubled my income. I had told Laura about it weeks in advance and specifically said I couldn't watch the kids that day. The morning of the presentation, she called saying she had an emergency meeting and needed me to take the kids. I refused, reminding her about my presentation. She showed up anyway, literally left the kids outside my apartment door, and drove off before I could stop her. Jake was crying because he had forgotten his favorite toy and Emma needed breakfast. I couldn't leave 2 small kids alone, so I had to cancel my presentation. I lost the client and a lot of money. When I confronted Laura later, she just rolled her eyes and said it's just work, you can always get another client. Family comes first. She didn't even apologize. When I told her I wouldn't babysit anymore unless it was a real emergency, she threw a massive fit. She called me selfish and ungrateful, saying I owed her because she accepted me as her sister when our parents got married, which is a joke because she never treated me like a sister. Now Laura has been telling everyone in the family that I'm refusing to help her even though she's struggling to balance work and family. She's painting me as the bad guy who doesn't care about family. Some relatives have been calling and messaging me, saying I should be more understanding and help out my sister. They don't know how she takes advantage of me, ruins my work, and never even shows any gratitude. I feel like I'm going crazy. These are their kids, not mine. I love Jake and Emma, but I can't keep putting my life and career on hold whenever Laura feels like dumping them on me. But everyone makes me feel like I'm wrong for setting boundaries. Ida for refusing to be her free babysitter? Update 1. After my last post, things took a wild turn. A few days later, I met my friend Sarah for coffee. Sarah works in the same company as Laura, and she mentioned something that caught my attention. She said Laura often takes these really long lunch breaks with a guy named Tom from the marketing department. According to Sarah, they always go to this cafe that's like a 30-minute drive from the office, even though there are plenty of good places nearby. Sarah thought it was weird but didn't want to start any gossip. This made me think about all those urgent meetings Laura had when she left her kids with me. I started going through my text messages with her and noticed a pattern. She would usually drop off the kids around lunchtime or late afternoon, claiming she had important meetings. But the timing never made sense for actual work meetings. Our family uses this tracking app that Dad made us all install after Mom died because he was paranoid about losing anyone else. I never really used it before, but I decided to check Laura's location history. Sure enough, during the time she claimed to be at work meetings, she was nowhere near her office. I debated with myself for days about what to do next. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, maybe she was just taking breaks from work stress. But then I remembered all the times she made me cancel my work, all the clients I lost, all the guilt trips she put me through. I decided to do some investigating. Last Tuesday, when she dropped off the kids saying she had an emergency budget meeting, I followed her. Instead of going to her office, she drove to this fancy apartment complex about 30 minutes away. She went inside and didn't come out for 3 hours. I took photos and videos from my car. This happened 3 more times that week, always the same apartment complex, always for several hours. But here's where it gets even crazier. While I was gathering evidence about Laura, I accidentally discovered something about Martin too. Remember how unbothered he was about Laura constantly dumping the kids on me? Last Thursday, Laura had left the kids with me saying Martin was working late and she had an important client dinner. I was driving back from the store when I passed by this upscale restaurant, and I saw Martin's car in the parking lot. Something made me park and watch. Martin was inside having dinner with a woman who was definitely not Laura. They were sitting really close, holding hands across the table, clearly not a business dinner. I recognized her as Claire, his assistant. I took some pictures and videos of them leaving together and getting into his car. At this point, I was both disgusted and curious. I used some of my savings to hire a private investigator for a week. The evidence he gathered was shocking. Laura was having an affair with Tom from her office. They would meet at his apartment during those emergency meetings. Meanwhile, Martin was seeing Claire. They had been having an affair for months. They were both using me as their cover story. When Laura needed to meet Tom, she would dump the kids with me claiming work emergencies. When Martin wanted to see Claire, he would tell Laura he had late meetings, and Laura would use that as an excuse to leave the kids with me. They were both lying to each other, and using me and their innocent kids to do it. The worst part was remembering all the times Jake would ask me why Mommy and Daddy were always so busy. Emma would cry at bedtime sometimes, saying she missed her parents. These poor kids were suffering because their parents were too selfish to even hire a proper babysitter. They used me because they knew I wouldn't ask too many questions. Yesterday, I finally reached my breaking point. I compiled all the evidence, photos, videos, location histories, timestamps, everything, and went to see my dad. I wanted him to see who he had been defending all these years. I showed him everything. He just sat there in silence, looking more shocked and devastated with each photo. Then I did something drastic. I sent everything to our extended family group chat, all the aunts, uncles, and cousins who had been calling me selfish for not helping Laura. I included a long message explaining how they had both been using me as free childcare while they cheated on each other. The response was immediate and chaotic. Laura called me screaming, calling me every name in the book. Martin showed up at my apartment, threatening to sue me for invasion of privacy and defamation. Dad hasn't spoken to me since seeing the evidence. My stepmom is absolutely devastated. This is the second time she's been betrayed by someone she trusted, first Laura's dad, now Laura herself. The whole family is in chaos. Some relatives are horrified at Laura and Martin's behavior, while others are saying I shouldn't have exposed them so publicly. But for the first time in months, nobody is guilt-tripping me about babysitting. I know I probably went nuclear by exposing them to everyone at once. Maybe I should have confronted them privately first. But after months of being manipulated, gaslit, and used by both of them, I was done playing nice. Those kids deserve better than parents who use them as pawns in their affairs. Update 2. The past month has been absolute chaos since I exposed Laura and Martin's affairs. The day after I sent the evidence to everyone, Martin packed his bags and moved into a hotel. Laura started having these massive meltdowns. She showed up at my apartment the same evening with the kids, saying she needed time to process everything and wanted me to keep them for a few days. I refused and told her to go ask her boyfriend Tom to help her since she chose him over her family. This made her completely lose it. She started screaming about how I had ruined her life and her marriage. I reminded her that she ruined her own marriage by cheating, and Martin ruined it too by cheating with Claire. She tried to say it was different because she was truly in love with Tom, while Martin was just having a fling. I shut the door in her face. My dad finally called after 2 weeks of complete silence. He broke down during the call. He admitted that he had noticed weird things about Laura's behavior for months but chose to ignore them because he didn't want to upset my stepmom. He apologized for always taking Laura's side and said he had failed both as a father to me and as a parent to Laura by enabling her behavior. Laura and Martin are getting divorced. The whole truth came out. They had both been cheating for over a year. Martin's assistant Claire is 5 months pregnant with his baby. She had been pressuring him to leave Laura, but he kept stalling. Tom, on the other hand, had been feeding Laura lies about leaving his wife. But as soon as everything became public, he ghosted Laura completely. He even requested a transfer to a different branch of the company to avoid the drama. Claire also broke things off with Martin when his family started messaging her. Turns out she had no idea he was using his kids as cover for their affair. She thought he only met her when the kids were at school or with their grandparents. When she found out how he and Laura had been using me and neglecting the kids, she wanted nothing to do with him anymore. The kids are staying with Laura but they're really struggling. Jake's teacher called because his grades were dropping and he had become withdrawn in class. Emma has started having tantrums and crying fits, especially when it's time for Martin's visitation. Laura tried to blame me for traumatizing her kids by exposing everything, but our relatives shut that down fast. They pointed out that she and Martin traumatized their kids by prioritizing their affairs over their children's well-being. My stepmom had a complete breakdown and moved in with her sister temporarily. She keeps saying she failed as a mother because she didn't notice what Laura was doing. Dad visits her every day but she's still not ready to come home. She feels humiliated because everyone knows her daughter was having an affair, just like her ex-husband did to her. Some relatives suggested we all go to family therapy to work through this mess. Laura refused, saying therapy is for weak people and she did nothing wrong because she was just following her heart. Martin agreed to therapy but only individual sessions. He says he needs to work on himself before he can be a better father. Martin is trying to get partial custody of the kids, but Laura is fighting him hard on this. She's telling everyone he's an unfit father because he got another woman pregnant while married. She conveniently forgets to mention her own affair when she tells this story. She's also demanding a huge amount in child support because she lost her job. The company let her go because Tom was married to the CEO's daughter, and the whole situation was too messy. I've blocked both Laura and Martin's numbers. I still see the kids when they're at dad and stepmom's place for weekend visits, but otherwise I'm staying completely out of the drama. Jake asked me last week why I don't babysit them anymore. I just told him that sometimes adults need space from each other, but I still love him and Emma very much. Dad asked me yesterday if I regret exposing everything and causing all this chaos. I told him I don't. Those kids deserve to have parents who put them first, not parents who use them as excuses to cheat. Sometimes things need to completely fall apart before they can be rebuilt into something better. I just hope Jake and Emma don't end up too scarred by all of this. Update 3: A lot has happened since my last update, so I thought I'd share one final post. The divorce between Laura and Martin was finalized last week. He got weekend visitation rights for the kids and has to pay significant child support. Claire had his baby, a boy, last month, but they're not together anymore. She moved to another state to be closer to her family after Martin kept trying to get back together with her. Laura lost her job at the tech company. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone knows it was because of her affair with Tom. He was married to the CEO's daughter, and when everything came out, the company decided to let Laura go to avoid drama. She tried to sue them for wrongful termination but dropped it when they threatened to countersue for creating a hostile work environment. Laura had to sell their house because she couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. She's living with my stepmom now, who moved back home last month. Laura tried to blame me for ruining her career and making her lose her house, but even Dad shut that down. He told her she ruined her own life with her choices. The kids are seeing a child therapist twice a week, which seems to be helping. Jake's grades have improved, and he started playing soccer again. Emma still has some separation anxiety, but she's not having daily meltdowns anymore. I see them whenever they're at Dad's place, and we do fun activities together like painting or baking. Laura tried asking me to babysit again last month. She said she had important job interviews and couldn't afford a sitter. I refused. She started crying about how hard her life is now and how she needs her sister's support. I reminded her that she never treated me like a sister until she needed something from me. She got angry and said I was being petty by holding on to the past. My dad and stepmom are in couples counseling. Stepmom is working through her feelings about Laura's behavior and how it triggered her trauma from her first marriage. Dad has really stepped up. He stopped trying to keep the peace at my expense and actually calls Laura out when she tries to manipulate situations. Yesterday, Laura sent me this long message about how much she misses the relationship we had as kids, which is funny because we never had a good relationship. She said she's changed and realized her mistakes. She wrote about how she's in therapy now and understands that she has attachment issues from her dad abandoning her. She wants to rebuild our sisterly bond and make things right. I left her unread. Some of our relatives think I should forgive her since she's struggling and trying to change. They say she's been punished enough by losing her marriage, job, and house. But I remember how she used her own children as cover for her affair. I remember how she made me lose clients and income without a second thought. I remember all the years of her treating me like I was nothing. I don't hate Laura anymore, that would require too much energy. I just don't want her in my life. She can work on herself and become a better person, but that doesn't mean I have to be part of her journey. My business is doing great now, I'm dating someone who respects my time and boundaries, and I have peace in my life. Sometimes cutting toxic people out of your life is the best thing you can do for yourself, even if they're family. The only contact I plan to maintain is seeing Jake and Emma when they're at Dad's place. They're the innocent ones in all this, and I want them to know they'll always have an aunt who loves them, even if I don't love their mother.